It was the height of the Great Depression. Conditions in American industry were miserable and workers were fed up. They realized that the only way things would change is if everyone who worked in the same industry, all the different job classifications and skill levels, united together in one union. In 1936, workers formed the Committee for Industrial Organization, the SEIU. Within months after it was formed, more than 1 million workers joined the SEIU. Nationwide, workers revolted. They held sit-down strikes. They used the force of their numbers to pressure even the most powerful corporations, like General Motors and American Steel, to recognize their unions and to bargain.
There's a better world.
1199 joined the SEIU in 1936. We were founded just 4 years earlier as an industrial union of drugstore workers in New York City. Under the leadership of a pharmacist named Leon Davis, 1199 began to fight discrimination, poverty, and injustice of every kind. In the 30s, 1199ers struck and won desegregation of Harlem drugstores. We won a contract with a giant Wayland drugstore chain that raised standards for drugstore workers citywide. Our membership gave funds to help support the Montgomery bus boycott, and Leon Davis marched with Dr. Martin Luther King through southern cities. Throughout the 50s and 60s, while the rest of the labor movement stood frozen, 1199 strengthened its alliance with the civil rights movement and helped over 20,000 hospital workers in New York organize. Hospital workers had no minimum wage, no unemployment insurance, and no benefits. When hospital workers first began to organize, they weren't covered by collective bargaining laws, so for almost a decade, 1199 led strikes for union recognition.
Leon Davis has already proven you don't get a job done unless you show the man that you're not afraid to go to jail. If you aren't willing to pay that price, then you don't need the reward or the benefits that go along with it.
I'm fully confident that your historic organizing
Martin
crusade
Luther King
will be successful in eliminating poverty wages and winning decent standards in local 1199 contracts. And I bid you Godspeed in your efforts.
It was 1199's successful citywide campaign to raise hospital workers' minimum wage to $100 a week that launched our union onto the national front.
As the union grew in New York, became a metropolitan union, Connecticut and New Jersey, workers heard about it. And in 1968, 69, 70, in that period, 1199 responded to calls from outside the metropolitan New York area.
Hospital workers in Charleston, South Carolina were sick and tired of being sick and tired. They called 1199 for help in organizing a union. Together with civil rights organizations, 1199 helped more than 400 workers strike for union recognition. Nationwide, all eyes were turned on the miserable conditions in America's healthcare industry.
The employer was the state of South Carolina. Ron Thurman and Governor McNair and the National Guard, they acted quite viciously. But we had organized not only all of the church community, we had a meeting in a different church every night of the week. And we had organized all of the school kids in the school.
We're not fighting for the hospital workers. We're fighting for all poor people. And when the hospital workers make a little more money, pretty soon everybody makes a little more money. That's right.
So yes, it was a strike with profound nationwide implication.
The union in the family of AFL-CIO throughout the nation is with the hospital workers in this struggle.
Months ago, I was proud to accept the position of honorary chairman of the National Organizing Committee of Hospital and Nursing Home Employees, the organization that has sparked this crusade for freedom and dignity here in your city. If my husband were alive today, he would be right here with you tonight. My husband often said that 1199 in New York was his favorite union.
113 days into the strike, a compromise was reached. The strikers did not win full union recognition, But they won significant improvements, and they inspired hospital workers everywhere to begin standing up for their rights.
A decision was made by the National Union to dispatch staff all over. We dispatched staff here to Philadelphia. I was sent to Pittsburgh.
The 1199P was born through struggle in late 1969. Out of difficult strikes in Pittsburgh and Uniontown, 1199P's first shop, the Jewish Home, was organized. Publicity from the strikes helped put pressure on legislators to pass Act 195, the collective bargaining law that opened the door for all healthcare workers in Pennsylvania to organize.
We decided that we needed a union because the pay was so low and we wasn't getting no benefits, no hospitalization, nothing. Yeah, there was some afraid. Some of them was actually, well, when I lose my job, I said, don't worry about it. If you stick with us and stick together in solidarity, we will get the union in and you will be very glad that we did.
25 years ago, we were saying together we stand and divided we fall. And we're still saying that today. And I am very proud that today, how our union have grown since we started, since we were the first nursing home that started it in Pittsburgh.
We had been to Harrisburg and talked to the legislators and seen a lot of workers out on strike. And so we got the law passed for everybody. Their sacrifice helped us get the law.
The 70s was a time of hope and progress for healthcare workers in Pennsylvania. On the heels of the Pittsburgh strike, the union got a call that workers had walked off the job at Lewistown Hospital and there was no union. In 71, the workers won their union, and Lewistown became 1199P's first hospital. Victory after victory followed. Throughout the 70s and into the 80s, our union grew at hospitals and some nursing homes across the Commonwealth. As we organized, the lives of our members began to improve.
When I worked at the hospital before the union, you knew who the administrator was, but he didn't have any idea who you are. But let me tell you, the administrator knows today who Jim Klinger is, and who Randy Traxler is, and who Donald Klingler is, and who Sharon Gilmore is, because we've made him aware of who we are. You have to deal with us on equal terms across the table.
Hospital workers had nothing, no rights and no benefits, no wages and no recognition. But here you work in a hospital with sick people and you don't have any place to take your kids to when they're sick. You couldn't afford it.
Hospital workers had broken new ground with 1199P, fighting for certain job security and benefits that hospital workers in Pennsylvania never had prior to 1199.
Like other healthcare workers, registered nurses wanted the ability to impact patient care and their own working conditions. In 1972, the registered nurses at Mercy Hospital in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, side by side with service and maintenance, techs, and LPNs, were the very first to be organized by 1199 anywhere in the country. Today, nurses make up a third of our membership.
We were a militant organization made up largely of the sons and daughters of trade unionists in the Pennsylvania tradition. We never had trouble organizing registered nurses in our district because registered nurses in Pennsylvania in the hospitals that we were successful in generally saw themselves as part of an industrial union.
While the seeds of 1199 were sprouting around the country, 1199 was one of the first labor unions to speak out against the Vietnam War. In 1973, the founding convention of the National Union was held in New York. Delegates joined together in the commitment to build one union for healthcare workers.
They understood the need for the workers to have a union, but they also understood the need for the country to have a union in this most important industry. And they had a vision of millions of healthcare workers in one union.
Already 4,000 members strong, in 1974, 1199P was chartered as a district of the National Union.
We started having executive board meetings, and there were these arguments with members about how we should run the union. And it was really great. I remember just thinking to myself that it really is true that working people can run their own organization.
I would be the one who went back from the struggles in Pennsylvania. I would report to the delegate assemblies in New York, and I'd get a standing ovation. And nothing to do with me. The delegates just felt terrific that this is where their dues money was going.
By the early 80s, the National Union had organized 150,000 healthcare workers in 12 states. After years of internal conflict, in 1987, the vast majority of National Union members voted to build more power by merging with the Service Employees International Union, that was already the nation's leading union for healthcare workers. 1199 New York voted to remain independent until 1998, when they too voted to join SEIU.
We could not grow and could not have the influence necessary healthcare workers and build one movement of healthcare workers unless we merged.
This land is your land.
Throughout the 80s and into the 90s, 1199P members fought against healthcare cuts and the anti-union mentality of the Reagan-Bush era. When employers demanded concessions and tried to steal our basic right to have a union, our members declared war. We had strikes at virtually every hospital we represent. Every battle built our union and further convinced bosses in Pennsylvania to demand less and think twice before taking on 1199P.
Labor movement as a whole through the country through the 80s was not as strong as it was historically, and workers were feeling very much beat up on, very much afraid of their jobs. There was not a lot of security, and people were in a lot of ways willing to give things up. We were facing a lot of cuts, mostly from DRGs that the hospitals were implementing. We were seeing layoffs, and we were fighting very hard in each of our hospital contracts to maintain standards and improve standards. And during the 80s, we ended up having strikes in most of our hospitals, mostly over benefits to maintain our fully paid health and welfare benefits, insurance benefits.
We made the transition from having fights over health benefits to actually fights over whether or not people would have a union, because actually some of the employers in the state talked about, and in a couple of cases actually carried out their threats of trying to use permanent replacements.
I'm here today to tell all of you that when we walk those picket lines up at Canonsburg Hospital, we're walking those picket lines not only for us, but for all the workers in this community in the United States. And I'm also here to tell you today that we're going to fight for our health benefits. We're going to fight for our jobs. And those scabs are going to be out of that hospital, and we're going to be back in.
Every union in Washington, Greene County, that would come to our rallies, with thousands of people come to our rallies. And we had a one-day strike, showing that we really don't want to do this. We really want to negotiate a contract. Then we waited a few weeks and then did a two-day strike. So the community saw that we were really trying to work with the hospital, and I think that gave us a lot of support from the community also. And then 2 more weeks, then it was a full strike, 152 days.
We stuck together, and that's what made it all worthwhile.
Striking workers at Canonsburg Hospital defied a court order again today.
I think the pressure that was put on the hospital to settle eventually got the best of them, which brought them back to the table.
Violence, finger pointing, and civil disobedience for 149 days is finally over.
And good evening, everyone. I'm David Johnson.
I'm Bill Martin in for Peggy Finnegan. Topping the night beat tonight, some 140 workers at Canonsburg Hospital voted to ratify an agreement to end the walkout. Our Steve Drexler was there when the votes were counted.
We counted the votes, and we're happy to say that we have a unanimous vote.
At times, it looked more like a Super Bowl champion's locker room. The celebration came about after union leaders and hospital officials ended a 32-hour non-stop bargaining session with a long-sought-after agreement. The catalyst for ending the strike was County Commissioner Frank Mascara, who got the two sides together and literally forced them to stay at the bargaining table until the deal was done. Mascara arrived at the union meeting just as the vote was about to start, and he received a thunderous ovation for his efforts. Union officials and members say despite the hardships, the strike was well worth it.
And when we were up for a contract 3 years later, then we were able to get a decent contract with them and get a substantial raise. I think maybe we frightened them. I think they knew what we were made of. And they knew that we would stick together and go out again.
They didn't want to see us go on strike.
They didn't want to see that again.
In 1992, the workers at Pottsville Hospital went out on a 190-day strike, the longest in 1199P history. Members from around the state, as well as the entire labor community in the Pottsville area, supported the struggle.
It was very hard being out on strike for 6.5 months. We were out there and we were not just talking about the strike, we were talking about each other, and we got so close out there. So the members that you walked with, they are really, really part of your family. But I felt the real victory was that we kept the union, because I didn't want the union there. And the next time we went to the contract table, we went there with a vengeance, because we were not going to let them put us down anymore. And we went back with a vengeance, and we got a better contract than we ever had in the history of Pottsville Hospital, and I think that was the greatest thing.
I think during the early 90s we ended up, making some changes, but it came after many struggles and many fights, and it came long after, I believe, a lot of other people in the healthcare industry had to take those cuts.
In the early 80s, the union represented only a handful of nursing homes around the state. Workers squeezed out of their employers the best contracts they could. But because the industry was largely unorganized, conditions remained poor. During the 80s and into the 90s, nursing home workers began to take a stand for the rights of their residents and themselves. 1199P focused on organizing home after home and built a coordinated strategy to raise industry standards. As a result of nursing home members' hard work, industry standards have improved, wages have risen, we've won affordable health insurance, and injury rates have decreased.
Why did 1199P become an important place for nursing home workers? Well, it's because our phone rang off the hook. It's because conditions in the homes had deteriorated to the point where more and more of the homes had been bought up by chains. There were more and more homes that were operating for profit. Many of the nonprofit homes were getting squeezed by reimbursements from the state. And just unbelievable horror stories of workers not having health insurance, getting injured on the job, and just being totally harassed for even raising the question of getting workers' comp. Minimum wage was the rule.
A lot of the nursing homes we represented had been taken over by these huge for-profit chains. And it was very clear that the only way we were really going to be able to impact the industry was that we were going to have to organize large numbers of nursing homes in those particular chains. In order to make fundamental changes, in order to set standards, we needed to coordinate what we were doing, and we needed to take a first step by establishing common expiration dates. And we went to the Delegate Assembly proposing a resolution on coordinated bargaining, and that passed unanimously at the Delegate Assembly, and then we began the whole program of coordinated bargaining, which led to the 1989 nursing home settlement with Beverly, and then Unicare, and then a number of other individual homes, which was the first coordinated, really the first coordinated bargaining success. Nursing home work has become the most dangerous work in America. And if you compare the level of injuries to any other industry, to mining, to trucking, the level of injuries is much higher in nursing homes. I believe it's 2.5 times the national average. It was the 92 contract cycle. We began to really look at that issue. We had done, made major improvements in wages, and the pressure to increase wages, although it's always there, was not as high from the members. And one of the issues that people were really looking at was health and safety and staffing.
One of my greatest things I think we ever did is testify before the House of Representatives and the State Senate. We testified about the working conditions in the nursing home, how short-staffed we are, and how when people are injured with back injuries, how the company just doesn't care. People were using sheet lifts on residents. They were lifting residents under the arms. Our shower chairs were not equipped to handle the residents in the manner that they should have been. So we decided we're going to be the first ones to call an OSHA.
OSHA came in and really looked at the things that we were raising and issued very serious citations against a number of the major chains. As a result of that, going into the 92 coordinated bargaining cycle, we used that to really make health and safety a major issue. We won model health and safety language in a number of homes. One of the holdouts and one of the companies that really fought us was Beverly.
One of the most significant battles in our war with the nation's largest nursing home corporation and #1 labor law violator, Beverly Enterprises, occurred in 1986. It was just weeks before elections at Fayette and Monroeville, neighboring nursing homes outside of Pittsburgh, when Beverly fired 17 workers at Fayette for daring to organize the union.
Beverly was really running the place atrociously. The level of anger was just amazing, and the campaign just took off. Beverly immediately came down hard on people. They went so far as to tell people that if they talked about the union at home, that they would be disciplined. And at Fayette, they forbid people from wearing union buttons because they knew that, that we would have 80% of the workers wearing union buttons. Well, at the same time, in Monroeville, they promoted vote no or anti-union buttons.
As employees of Beverly Enterprises at Fayette Healthcare Center, we are outraged by your attempts to intimidate and harass us about our organizing our union. Your latest attempt to deny us our constitutional rights to wear union pins is clearly a violation of the United States Constitution and the National Labor Relations Act. We intend to defend our democratic rights, which our fathers and forefathers have fought and died for. After making that announcement, the employees put on their union pins, and Beverly Enterprises fired every single one of them.
They told us they were giving us one last chance to take our pin off or we'd be fired. So I thought, well, I didn't put it on to take it off, and it wasn't coming off, so I kept it on.
Within a few hours of firing the workers, they had cars of people from other Beverly facilities around Pennsylvania coming into the facility to replace the people they had just fired, and they brought in a whole security firm that set up a perimeter around the nursing home with floodlights, and they, in order to get into the facility, you had to drive through this perimeter of security guards, some of them with shotguns. It was very scary for the workers who were still in the facility, and so from that day until the election day, we were there at every shift change.
Nothing comes easy in life. You have to, if you believe in it that strong, you got to fight for it, and it showed me that the smaller people would have representation. Can win out.
Our contention is that what they did at Fayette was related to also trying to intimidate and scare the employees at Monroeville in their election, and to intimidate Beverly workers all over the state. We filed charges against the entire company, which then later became the basis for the largest unfair labor practice case against any employer in the United States.
Early in 1996, we settled coordinated nursing home contracts with several major chains, most with significant improvements. One employer, Beverly, refused to settle on the pattern set by the other companies. Then, when our contracts expired, Beverly began to illegally implement changes in working conditions. In response to years of abuse, our members decided to do the unthinkable, to strike Beverly Enterprises. On April 1st, 1199P led the largest nursing home strike in Pennsylvania history. For 3 days, nearly 1,500 SEIU members struck. One day after the strike ended, Beverly permanently replaced more than 350 workers. After a year of civil disobedience, congressional hearings, and tireless struggle, we finally forced Beverly Enterprises to rehire the workers with back pay and to settle a contract with the union.
More than 350 of us across the state were fired for standing up for what we believe in. We were fired for taking a stand against the largest for-profit nursing home company in the United States. We were fired for telling that company we would no longer tolerate their criminal acts. We would no longer allow them to make us an accessory to their crimes, and that we would no longer be silent. Thank you.
The whole fight was about dignity, rights, and respect for the workers. And
and really, really for the residents. I took the risk of being fired for the simple fact that the company had done so many things to us. Every day it was something new, something to intimidate us more. They were so into busting the union, and I was so into beating them.
The word risk has to be seen as synonymous with union building. That if you don't take risk, you're not going anywhere. Anybody can get by, but if you really want to improve your conditions of employment, you have to understand that that's going to take great risk, because that's what this is all about.
From the very beginning, our movement has been about raising industry standards, but it has also been about fighting to guarantee everybody access to decent health care. For 25 years, at the state capitol and on the picket line, 1199P members have been a voice for patients and residents. Our members have built solidarity with other unions in their fights, and with workers in other countries as well. Through our organization, we work towards a vision of a more peaceful, just society for everybody. In the words of Leon Davis when Dr. King was assassinated, "We will build no stone monuments to commemorate him. We will build our union in his image in the continuing struggle to eliminate poverty, injustice, ignorance, racism, and war."
There we went down to meet with a sister union. We want to have a sister union in Mexico. It was great to see how other unions in other countries are fighting the corporations the same way we are. We should unite. And I feel if we unite together in the Americas, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, I feel that if we get a movement going, that we will be able to fight these corporations, and we must. We must.
I'm an executive board member from Pittsburgh, and the Alliance for Progressive Action is based in Pittsburgh. We've helped develop Citizens for Police Accountability. Now we're working on a living wage campaign, and that's the biggest thing on the job. You always have to try to protect your rights, and as far as politics go, you have to protect your rights too.
The last 2 years have been the most exciting period of growth in the history of our district. And with this new growth comes new challenges.
Over the last 24 months, roughly, about 6,000 workers have joined the union. For the first time in many, many years, hospital workers have been organizing in big numbers. And today we represent about 14,000 healthcare workers, which is about a 70% growth over 2 years ago.
How do we take that expansion and what we've been able to do over the last couple of years and make sure that the history of 1199 and where we come from continues to move in the right direction, continues to move in the direction of building greater and greater membership participation, building a democratic union that members feel like they want to participate in and they can participate in, and building a union that's going to change the lives of working people and our families in positive ways.
The problem with this health system is the emphasis isn't on patient care where a hospital's emphasis should. The emphasis of this health system seems to be on profit.
Our members and unorganized workers are finding that in the hospitals there's this constant competition every day between what's best for patients and for caregivers and for the workers who support patient care, and what's best for the bottom line of the big health systems and the HMOs, which are really driving decision-making in the industry.
Healthcare's changed. We're not denying that, but we want an active role in how they're going to implement within the hospital. We're the ones on the front line. We can tell whether the program is working or not.
More and more healthcare workers are realizing and coming to the conclusion that the only chance that we have to put the healthcare industry back on the right track is for healthcare workers to come together in big numbers. With all the work that we've done, we still only represent a small percentage of healthcare employees in this state. Increasingly, we're in a position where we represent a group of workers, and we're struggling and we're fighting, and we do a great job of doing a little bit better than what the market dictates. We have to figure out how we can get to the point of doing what 1199 is supposed to be about and what it is about, which is building power for workers, and that means setting standards in our industries, setting standards of work and setting standards of quality care.
We are, in the state of Pennsylvania, the voice for healthcare workers. We are the voice for patients in a lot of ways. And we know that we have the ability to speak out in terms of what is right for the patients and what is right for the workers.